welcome to practice today. Thanks everybody for making the time to come here and create this space together. It's really nice to be in a studio with real students and real people and actually generating this energy that we're going to practice together. So happy to see everyone. And I would like to begin with a little meditation so we can kind of let ourselves settle down a little bit and settle into the practice and notice our breathing. Notice how it feels to breathe from the inside. What does it feel like to have a body? What does it feel like to sit in this form and to be still for a minute? I often ask myself as I'm practicing, like, what is it that we're seeking through this practice? Is it some kind of wellness? Is it happiness? Is it a sense of peace? A sense of bliss? Or maybe even just a pleasure of the form, of being able to fulfill the body into this form and to find this posture and the sense of joy that can arise when we realize that we're able to fulfill a shape. It's such a simple but a beautiful thing just to be able to move. And it's a way that we can kind of develop our mind to notice the body as it's felt from within. To notice this feeling of this goodness that comes from us that doesn't need any kind of external comfort, that everything that we need is with us here and now in this very breath of air. We have everything that we need. We can cultivate our mindfulness, our patience, our endurance and determination. We can become focused, we can clear the mind as we become alert and aware, finding refuge in that awareness, that we can cultivate this sense of being, the sense of holding this posture, whether it's a simple sitting pose, or a triangle, or anything in between. There's a sense of joy in being able to find that pleasure from within, of just being able to move the body and bring the mind into tune and in sync with the body as we move, trying to become aware of every muscle that we move, noticing every inch of the body with every breath of air that we breathe. And throughout this practice, we're really going to develop that awareness and nurture it. We can kind of indulge in this pleasure that doesn't take anything, it doesn't cost anything in the world, but everything that we need, this sense of fulfillment can come from within just by sitting in a posture or finding a few poses. With that intention, we can begin to open our eyes. Give yourself a particularly satisfying breath of air. Breathe in a way that feels good. Place our hands onto the mat. We find ourselves in our tabletop. So we can begin to move the back. Finding a cat-cow, so as you exhale, you can let the belly drop and bring the shoulders down to the hips, opening the heart. And inhaling as we bow, lengthening the back of the spine. Following through at your own pace. Moving the spine vertebrae by vertebrae, starting with the tail. Noticing yourself grow a little bit longer as the body begins to awaken and grow present. Let's come up onto our knees, kneeling posture. Reaching our arms overhead, lengthening the side body with a little crescent. Exhaling off to the side as we keep this side body strong. And finding the other side. Lifting ourselves back up to center. Then we're going to bow into a puppy pose, lifting our tailbone up behind us, wiggling our fingers out as far ahead of us as we can, bringing those shoulder blades onto the back, letting the heart melt. As we tuck our toes behind us, and lift the tailbone all the way up into our first downward facing dog. Trying to bring the trunk towards your legs, pedaling out the feet. Stepping the feet inch by inch forwards, coming up onto the fingertips, finding our forward fold. Our hands can come to shins, Ardha Uttanasana. And then we'll bow. Maybe grabbing the elbows and letting the upper body swing from right to left, left to right. Releasing our elbows, keeping the back flat as we grow tall, lifting our hands as tall as we've been today, and then grow just an inch taller. Bring our hands to our heart, and find our mountain pose, and find a very mindful mountain pose, keeping the side body strong, keeping the ribs knitted into the core. Shoulders pulling down towards the hips. We're going to bow for our first sun salutation A. Uttanasana. Ardha Uttanasana. Halfway. Bowing a little bit deeper on the exhale. Each exhale is a bow. Each inhale rises up. We're going to, from our high plank, exhale as we slowly lower down to our bellies, very slowly, moving as intentionally as possible, coming all the way down to our bellies, and this time taking a locust pose as we bring our hands to the sides of our hips and open the heart up as high above the mat as you can, trying to give yourself a little bit of height and then a little bit more. Bringing our hands to the sides of our shoulders and down to the mat as we lift ourselves into a low cobra and a downward facing dog. Pedaling out the feet, lengthening the spine, pushing our weight to our fingertips and behind the knuckles. Walking the feet forwards, forward fold. Look up halfway, hands to shins, lengthening the spine, opening the heart. and bowing, and then rising up tall, and bringing our hands to our heart. Taking a moment to breathe. We're going to try some Sun Salutation B form. We're going to do 3 of them. We're going to move very mindfully, very slowly as we bow. Finding our Uttanasana. Bending the knees, lengthening the core for Utkatasana, the chair pose. Our hands overhead, our shoulders behind the earlobes, keeping the back muscles strong. Keeping the core strong, pulling these ribs in, and bowing on the exhale. Stepping or hopping back, finding our high plank pose, finding a mindful high plank, so we're pulling our hands towards our toes, and we're pulling our toes towards our hands, and noticing the core fire up. And then very, very slowly, we're going to take a chaturanga. Opening our heart for first a low cobra. Noticing if you can use the back muscles in the core to lift your shoulders with the low cobra. Lifting the heart. And then turn it into a high cobra when you put your arm muscles into it. Finding a little bit of a back bend. Finding the heart opening out just a little bit more, and tucking the toes behind us as we find our downward facing dog. Ardha Mukha Shavasana. Pedaling out the feet until the feet are flat. We're going to raise the right foot up behind us, lifting it as high as it'll go. Bring that right knee to the right elbow. Holding our core strong. And exhaling that foot all the way back out behind us. 3-legged dog. And then the right knee comes to the left elbow. Finding a little bit of a twist. Feeling the lower back loosen up. And exhale that foot back out behind us. Lifting it a little bit higher this time. And then mindfully stepping forwards between the hands, spinning the back heel flat. So we bring our shoulders square, our hips square, keep the ribs tight. We're going to start with our shoulders pulling down towards the mat. Feeling our foundation with our feet as we pull them inwards and together, so the inner legs are firing up. And then growing our hands overhead as we keep the core strong. Now maintaining that core, let's bow. Bringing our hands to frame the foot. Stepping that right foot back. Finding our high plank. And lowering down. Chaturanga. Opening our heart to a low cobra. Using that core to lift the heart up off the mat, and then putting the weight into the hands for the high cobra. And tucking the toes behind us, finding our down dog, pedaling out the feet. Find where that right heel is flat on the mat, and lift the left heel. Point the toe, lift the foot as high as it'll go. Bring the left knee to the left elbow and tuck it in. Feel the core fire up here, squeezing the hands together, keeping the shoulders square. And exhaling that left foot back out behind us. And then bringing the left knee to the right elbow, finding the crossbody stretch. Maybe little back pops as you try to keep the shoulders square. And exhaling that left foot out behind us. Grow it tall, grow it just an inch taller. And then mindfully step the left foot forwards between the hands. The back heel comes down to the mat. Square the hips. Shoulders pull towards the hips. Bring our hands reaching for the mat beneath us. Trying to keep as much of the weight that's on the back foot on the outside of the back foot. And pulling that in and forwards. And then we'll grow our hands up tall overhead. Keeping the core strong. Let's bow. Bring our hands to frame that front foot. Lifting the back heel off the mat. And stepping this left foot back to meet the right. From our high plank. Lowering down. Chaturanga. Opening the heart for our low cobra. And our high cobra. And tucking the toes, finding our downward facing dog. Shoulder blades on the back, shoulders behind the earlobes. And walking the feet forwards into the forward fold. Lifting the tailbone up behind us. And then bending the knees, finding our chair pose. Utkatasana. And growing tall, bringing our hands to our heart. And noticing your breathing. Maybe it's changed a little bit. Just being aware of how it feels. You're becoming a connoisseur of the breath. Drinking in each breath of air like some fine meal made at the fanciest restaurant. Each breath of air is beautiful and joyous just to breathe. And lifting our arms up tall. Keeping the side body long. We're going to bow. Uttanasana. Ardha Uttanasana. Uttanasana. Bending the knees, finding the chair. Utkatasana. Shoulder blades behind the ears. Hands, you can either have them apart or squeezing together overhead. Maybe giving the hips a little bounce, and maybe letting them sink just a little bit deeper. Finding that strength in the core and holding that as we bow. Bringing our hands and the backs of the knuckles to the mat. Pushing our weight into our hands as we step or hop back. Finding our plank. Finding our strong plank. Keeping that same core action as we lower down. Let's go for our slowest chaturanga yet. Trying to be very mindful of every little motion, flipping the toes, finding a high cobra. Maybe staying here with keeping the ribs tight into the belly, shoulders on the back. Maybe lifting up into an up dog, if that's part of your practice. And then pushing back to our downward facing dog. Paddling out the feet, lifting the tailbone. We're going to lift the right foot up. And very slowly, very mindfully, stepping it forwards between the hands. Moving as slowly as possible. As we rise up, bringing our hips square, our shoulders pulling down. Keeping the core strong, reaching our hands up in front of us. Interlocking the fingers. We're going to do some little infinity circles, moving as slowly as possible, using the muscles in the obliques and the lower core, and squeezing those hands together with as much pressure as you'd like to be challenged today. mindful of every little motion. Feeling strong from the feet as you're pulling those feet inwards and together. Reversing direction. Feeling all four corners of each shoulder. And bringing our hands to our heart. And bowing the hands to frame the front foot. Lifting that front foot off of the mat. Slowly stepping it back. You can always skip the chaturangas from this point forwards if you'd like. Or if you're level 2, you can do them slower every time. That's what I like to do. Just for reference, there are no arm balances coming up. And so we have to make them up with chaturangas if you're the level 2 side of 1-2. From our down dog, we're lifting that tailbone, squeezing those hands together, bowing the heart towards the heels, and then lifting that left foot up as high above us as we can, and very, very slowly moving that foot between the hands, finding our foundation, and lifting up. Square the hips and the shoulders, keeping the weight on the outside of that back foot. Bringing our hands to our heart and reaching them forwards, interlocking the fingers and squeezing the hands together with as much pressure as you would like to be challenged with. As we move, using the core muscles to rotate the shoulders and feeling all four corners of the shoulders in our little infinity circles. The slower you can move here, the better. Reversing directions, you've made it all the way around. Noticing your foundation strong, lifting up from the top of your head the whole time, so you have as much height as you can. And bringing our hands back to our heart. And down to bow to frame that front foot. Lifting the foot off the ground, very slowly stepping it back. Either taking the slowest chaturanga yet, or meeting me in dog. Opening up into our high cobra. And an up dog as we straighten the arms and pull the heart forwards, keeping the legs off the mat. Keeping the core strong. And then lifting the tailbone behind us. Finding our downward facing dog, Ardha Pushavasana, padding out the feet, and giving ourselves 5 breaths here. Noticing where the breath is going when we breathe. Are we breathing into our chest? Are we breathing all the way down into the diaphragm? We can fill the lower back with our breath. And then we'll walk our feet forwards to frame the foot, finding our forward fold. Inhaling to look up. And exhaling to bow. And we're going to bend the knees, finding our chair pose. Keeping these ribs in. They always want to kind of pull out, keep them in and strong to the core. Giving our hips a little bit of a bounce and maybe letting them sink a little bit lower. And then rising tall lifting up as high as we can. And we'll bring our hands to our heart. And take a moment. Noticing the heart beating. Being grateful for every breath of air. Each one feels a little better than the last. Knowing that oxygen is giving us exactly what we need. Let's let our arms dangle for a moment. Shake it out, a windmill.
No 90s alternative music today?
Not with the live stream, but I was thinking about it. It's playing in my head. Alright, let's let our arms dangle to a pause. We have one more sun salutation bead. Let's try and make this the slowest and the most mindful. Inhaling to rise tall. And bow. Uttanasana. Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, Utkatasana, chair. Keeping that core strong. Keeping those shoulders all the way on back. Letting the hips sink as low as they'll go. Keeping the heart open. And we're going to bow. Bringing our hands down to the mat. You can step or hop or jump back. Finding our plank. And lowering down for chaturanga. Opening the heart to our high cobra or our up dog. Rolling over the toes, finding our downward facing dog. Pedaling up the feet. The left heel comes flat as we raise the right foot off of the mat. And stepping that right foot forwards between the hands. Finding our warrior one. Virabhadrasana one. Shoulders pulled down towards the hips. This time we're going to add a little bit of a back bend as we open the heart and lengthen on the inhale and reach for the wall behind us on the exhale. Inhaling to lift ourselves back tall. And exhaling to come down and frame that front foot. We're going to lift the foot off the ground, keeping that knee tucked into the chest. And hold here for a moment. Finding our three-legged plank. And pushing that foot back out behind us, keeping it lifted. And bringing our feet back together. Let's lift our left foot out behind us. And mindfully step it forwards between the hands. Lifting up into our warrior one. Our last warrior one. Let's make it really count. Being really mindful of those feet pulling inwards and together, trying to square the hips. So you're pulling that right hip forwards and up, and pushing the left hip down. Shoulders pull towards the back. Let's reach up and lengthen the spine on the inhale, and exhale, reaching for the wall behind us. Keeping keeping the core strong to protect the back. And then lifting tall and folding forwards to bow and frame the foot. Putting our weight onto our hands, lifting that foot off the mat, keeping the knee tucked into the chest. Noticing how the core feels here. Slowly stepping that foot back, finding a high plank. Finding our form with our hands just beneath the shoulders and the back flat. The hands pulling towards the toes and the toes pulling toward the hands. So you're isometrically lengthening the spine. Very slowly lowering down. How slow can you go? Finding our cobra and our up dog. And pushing back for downward facing dog. Keeping those shoulders onto the back. Pedaling at the feet. And then walking our feet forwards to our hands. Inhaling to look up. Exhaling to bow. And then finding our chair pose. Keeping the shoulders on the back, letting the hips sink just a little bit lower. Finding the weight onto our heels so we can pull the toes up off the mat. Let's bring our hands to our heart. We're going to add a prayer twist so you can bring the left elbow onto the outside of the right leg. Opening the heart, lengthening that right side body as you keep the left obliques engaged. Back release. And unwinding, lifting ourselves back up to center, bouncing our hips, finding our form, and then bringing that right elbow over to the left. Exhaling into the twist. And inhaling back to center, balancing those hips, sticking with the chair. We're going to bow into a forward fold. And then rise up tall. Lengthening the spine, growing as tall as we get. And bringing our hands to our heart. And noticing the stillness of the mind. Being aware of every single breath of air. Notice the air flowing through, almost imagine it coming in from the very top of your head and flowing all the way through your body, all the way down to your feet and your toes. Notice our own little mental image of the body as we stand in this form. Notice how good it feels just to stand still, just to be still for a moment. If you didn't appreciate, if you're getting a little antsy when we're in meditation in the beginning, it feels good to be still for a moment after our warm-up. The warm-up's done. Let's release our hands, let our shoulders loosen up. We're going to find our hands to our heart, taking a moment in a tree pose. So you can bend the knee into our standing balance. Maybe take the hand and bring the heel to the inner thigh. Finding your steadiness. Maybe finding stable wristy to focus on. Trying to bring this knee out and behind you to open the hip. And the tree is a hip opener. This is our Vrikshasana pose. And once you're stable, you can grow your branches and open your heart. And maybe add just a little back bend. Breathing all the way down to the lower back. And finding our stability. I breathe in, I am a mountain. I breathe out, I feel steady. Let's bring our hands back to our heart. And our feet back together. Maybe stepping on the toenails to the ground to release anything from that foot. Lots of toe pops from that. And we're going to find our stability and our steadiness with the weight on the opposite foot. So bring the left knee to the chest. Standing tall, lengthening the spine, and bringing that heel to the inner thigh. Trying to open this hip as you push the knee out behind him. And once you are stable, open the heart and grow your branches. Lots of beautiful steady trees in the room. No wind today, that's good. Keeping the heart open as we bring the hands to the heart and our knee into standing balance. Set the feet back down. We're going to find a dancing warrior here. So starting from that standing balance, and we're going to step back into warrior two, moving as slowly as possible so we really test our balance the whole way back. Putting that back foot down so that the heel intersects the arch of the back foot. And opening our arms out long, finding our full wingspan, squeezing those feet together, flipping the front palm, reaching up, and for the wall behind us. And using the core to lift yourself back up into the warrior two, bending the elbow, and finding side angle curls, Konasana. Trying to keep a straight line between that back heel and that top hand, and lengthening that side body as much as you can without letting the lower side body collapse. We're going to bring our hands down to frame the front foot, spinning the back heel up, and stepping this left foot back. Lowering down, all the way down onto our bellies. This time we're going to find a half bow pose. We lift, bend the knee and reach for the top of the left foot with the left hand. Opening the heart and finding a little back bend as we look up. Feeling that shoulder really open up. And feeling that heart pull forwards and keeping the core really strong here. A lot of core in this practice. Let's release, come down, trying the other side. Finding the half bow and opening the heart. Keeping the lower core strong to protect the back as we find our back bends. And exhaling down to release, lifting ourselves up into our down dog. And now we're going to step the right foot forwards, the opposite side from what you did first in the warrior two. Finding our full wingspan as you gaze over the middle finger, squeezing those feet together. Feeling the inner thighs fire up as you try to bring that front heel and the back foot, the outside of the back foot pushing into the mat. Flipping the front palm and reverse the warrior, also known as the peaceful warrior. Reaching to that wall behind us as we lengthen that right side body. And then using the core to lift yourself back into warrior two, bending the elbow, finding a side angle pose. So here you want that hand reaching forwards and the shoulder behind the ear. Keeping the ribs pulled into the core as we pull down to frame the foot. Stepping this foot back. And lowering down to our bellies. We're going to find the full bow pose this time. Grabbing both of our feet, the tops of both feet, as we open the heart. Maybe rocking back and forth a little bit to add to the back bend. Trying to kick the feet into the hands and the hands pulling the feet up to give your heart as much lift as you can get. Keeping the core really strong here. And releasing, bringing the hands beneath the shoulders as we lift up and meet in Ardha Mukha Shavasana, down dog. Paddling up the feet and stepping, hopping, or jumping forwards. Let's inhale to look up. And exhale to bow. And rise up. Growing tall. And bringing our hands to our heart. We're going to bring the left knee into our chest in our standing balance. Stepping this back into the warrior two as slowly as possible so we can test our balance all along the way. Opening up the warrior two. Once we find our form with our feet strong, flipping the palm and reaching up to the reverse warrior. And then this time we're going to square our shoulders forwards and reach both of our hands up. Keeping those shoulder blades on the back. And then bring the right hand behind the back to the left hip. Finding the exalted warrior. Feeling the heart open. As we add a little back bend and reach for the wall behind us. Let's unwind and bring our hands down to frame that front foot. Stepping, hopping, jump, switching, meeting on the other side. Finding our warrior two. Find the foundation and the full wingspan. Flipping palm, reaching up and for the wall behind us. And then squaring those shoulders as we open the heart. Both hands come up. And the left hand reaches for the right hip, adding the bind for the shoulder
opening the heart, trying to keep both shoulders in line with one another. As you reach for the wall behind you and open your heart. Unwinding as we bring our hands down to frame the foot. The back heel comes up. We're going to lift that back foot all the way up into a standing split. Bowing into the standing split. Find our left hand in front and to the left of that left foot and find Ardha Chandrasana, the half moon pose. So here we're trying to open the hips, stacking the hips right on top of one another, pushing up through that back heel and lifting that back foot as high as we can, looking up at the hand above. We'll bring both hands back down into our standing split and step this foot back into a pyramid pose so that the feet are about hip distance apart, the back foot about 45 degrees, both legs straight, squaring the hips, and we'll bow, keeping the back flat. Maybe bring the hands to the mat, maybe binding them behind the back, or reverse namaste, whichever works for you. Now we're going to bring our hands down to frame this front foot, bending into the knee as we put our weight into our hands and jump switch. This time finding our pyramid pose here so the feet don't have to be super wide. Finding the shoulders, flat back, adding whichever bind with the hands behind the back or just the hands reaching for the mat beneath us is fine too. This is our pyramid pose as we pull that right hip back and the left hip forwards, trying to keep them square and in line with one another. Feeling those hips open up, especially that front hip is really opening right here. And we'll bring our hands down in front of that foot as we bend into the knee. Lift that left foot up off the mat for our standing split. Trying to get as much height on that back heel as we can. The right hand comes in front and to the right of the right foot, finding our half moon, Ardha Chandrasana, trying to stack that left hip on top so you bring it back a little bit more. There you go. Pushing out to that heel behind you and lifting the foot. Really trying to lift that top hip as high as you can. Looks good. Trying to bring that top hip back. Alright, let's bring our hands down and our feet down and release. A moment for water, please. It's almost time for a cool down. Almost. Now that our hips are open and our shoulders are open and our heart is open, we should be fairly well balanced after a few balance poses. Let's find our standing balance, the weight on the left foot, the right foot out in front of us. We're going to start with a Padangusthasana, so see if you can grab your toe and reach forwards. Don't worry about getting the leg all the way straight, but keep the spine straight. So you can bring the foot in front of us and to the side. Testing our balance. Once that hip feels open, release the toe, bring the foot behind, finding our steadiness, finding our dancer pose, Natrajasana, so that the hand is grabbing the top of the foot, kind of like our half bow. If you need to bow as you find your balance, you can get to it from standing split as well. We're trying to keep that heart open, kick the foot into hand, and hand lifting the foot. Finding our dancer's pose. And meeting me back at the top. Very good. Let's do a little release on the toes. Or we try the other side. Finding the weight on the right foot. As we bend the left knee into the heart. Finding the steadiness, either staying here or grabbing the toe. Trying to keep that right hip down as we stay here. Opening that left hip all the way out to the left. And then releasing the toe, grabbing the top of the foot, bending a little bit into the front knee as we lean forward, and kicking that foot into the hand as you use your shoulder to lift that foot as high as it can go. Maybe using your arms, a little bit of a counterbalance, finding your steadiness, opening your heart, holding here for as long as feels comfortable. Finding your steadiness. Beautiful. And we'll release. All right, let's, I think we've earned a few cool down poses. So let's find our way to a seated position. We're going to bend the left heel into the right hip for our figure four. The right hand grabbing the outside of that right foot. The left hand reaching behind us and above us. And looking under the armpit as we release that side body. Trying to keep those shoulders as close to stacked as you can. Breathing all the way into that left kidney. Should feel good in the obliques and the core. Then we'll release and come back up to center. Flipping the feet. Left hand grabbing that outside of that left foot, or a strap, or whatever is accessible for you. Right hand reaches behind us, and then above us. And then you look under the armpit, trying to keep those shoulders stacked as you reach for the foot overhead. Breathing all the way into the core and the lower back and side body. Some nice deep breaths here, feel good. And then we'll release and pull ourselves back up. Let's bring both of our heels and feet together. Finding our butterfly. Opening the feet like a book, trying to get all 10 toenails down to the mat, trying to bring your wings flat so that your thighs are as close to flat to the mat as you can. Our Baddha Konasana, keep our spine straight and lift up as tall as we can. And then bow from the hips, keeping the back totally flat. And bow as low as you can with a flat back first on the first exhale. And then we inhale back up to center. And it's the second one after your deep inhale as you lengthen the spine. This time we can bow and curve the back as you reach your nose for the mat above your toes. And those hips open and release. Coming back up to center. Bring our knees together. We're going to find a happy baby pose. Grab the outsides of the feet, rocking side to side, rooting the tailbone, shoulder blades on the mat. Maybe taking any last poses you might need. If you like halasana, I use like a plow pose to release the lower back. Bring your knees over your head. Hide the ears with your knees.
vertebrae going along, finding our Shavasana. As we take this moment, take rest. Let yourself surrender to the part of you that is breathing. Part of you that is always there within you, beating your heart for you, always making sure your blood goes where it needs to go, making sure that every breath does exactly what it needs to do. Take comfort in the breath, like the comfort in being in the home of an old friend who's always there for you. Breathing in out of love and compassion for your own self, your own body within. Noticing how it feels to be you. Feeling yourself growing stronger and more capable and more aware with every breath that you take. And to become keenly aware of all the goodness that lies within you, in every cell of your body, every inch of your skin. Notice where you are. Notice this moment. How good it feels to accomplish everything that we have accomplished through this practice together today. You can bend your knees into your chest. Give yourself a hug, rocking side to side. And rolling over onto the right side body in a fetal position. Feeling yourself renewed. And pushing yourself up into a seated position. Your hands at your heart. And your eyes closed. You should be very proud of yourselves for taking this time to take care of you. The love and light in me honors the love and light in each of you. Namaste.